everyone. Welcome to the 100 Days of Gen AI Expert Series. I'm your host, Vidhi, of All About Scale podcast. Today, we speak with Ankit, who makes a perfect fit for our podcast as we talk about all facets of scale on this show, which by nature extends to the topic of generative AI, something you are hearing day in, day out today. So, Ankit has experience building scalable systems. He is the engineering manager with Meta, where he's working on building generative AI applications. So you now know the reason why Ankit is a perfect fit for us. Now, he's also recognized as 40 under 40 data scientist by, I think, Analytics India magazine. He's also an AI advisor and investor in several companies. And previous to Meta, he's worked in Uber AI. Ankit, so many things you are doing. On top of that, you are keeping yourself updated with Gen AI, and not just keeping yourself updated with what's happening in this space, you're actually really working on the ground. How are you managing it?
Yeah, I think I joke. So thanks first of all for inviting me, Vidhi, and thanks for the kind introduction. And excited to meet everyone. So I think I keep on saying this. Like I think previously, like the progress in AI, particularly the amount of paper that come on archive every day, is like nobody can keep up. And these days, actually, my best keep up mechanism is sometimes asking Chat GPT itself on some of the things that has come out. Or the another good thing I found is generally like follow relevant people on Twitter, because any new paper that is any new research that comes out which is like quite prominent, somebody will create a thread on it and have a summary, which
Okay.
kind of helps me to easily kind of grasp it before kind of reading through all the papers. But the progress is insane, and if any one of you feel that you cannot keep up, trust me, nobody is able to do it.
And did I just hear it right? You using thread and Twitter in the same sentence.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I think they're switching to threads.
Okay. And have you already switched or you're planning to switch?
I have switched. Not all people have switched,
Okay.
but soon we'll
And
have
who
it.
are the people we should follow? That you follow and you stay updated? Who should the people that we all should follow?
Yeah, I think that really depends on like what area of AI you are kind of working towards, because each area have different level of experts. But some of the common ones like that people follow and people should follow is like Andrew Ng, and like chief scientist of different companies on MSR, on other top tech big companies. Just follow them. I think you will hear a lot of updates on what is happening in the field overall. And I think that is always good to keep yourself updated. So I think, yeah. So I think in terms of just the top researchers that you see, and also the top, like the common people like Andrew Ng, Geoff Hinton, and others that you see generally.
All right. Perfect. We'll do that. And have they also joined threads?
Well, I cannot comment on that.
Okay. And before we proceed, Ankit, I just want the audience to know that Ankit has been kind enough to join us on his Saturday evening, which is, I think, very few people who are passionate about their craft, the work, the technology that they're doing, they're able to pull it off. So thanks, Ankit, for doing that.
Sure. Thanks a lot, Vidhi.
All right. So let's get started. So, Ankit, I'm keen to know the work you are doing in Gen AI space. Can you share how is it different from other AI applications that you've worked on, built, or developed previously?
Yeah, I think Gen AI is particularly very interesting because this is the first time. The way I think about this is like this is the first time that we are able to develop AI native applications versus AI as an enabler applications. The what I mean by that is essentially like primarily if you think about like how AI has been used, like if you think about Uber, for example, AI is used to kind of optimize ETAs or kind of get ETAs. So I think the product is Uber ride sharing or a cab, right? But AI is used to kind of help it optimize. So think about like several social media platforms or even Google search or other products, that the product is something different, but we are trying to optimize it through AI. But in this case, the reality is different. Chat GPT is actually AI, if you think
Yeah.
about it, right? So it's like an AI native applications that this is the first time in my career I have seen that transition, that now I'm working on AI native applications versus AI as an optimizer applications that we have seen throughout our careers. So that shift is, I think, is very interesting to me. And I think with this shift in generative AI, I feel that more and more applications will be more like the AI native part of applications will be more and more. I think it's not that, or just to say this, like I think it's not that nobody has seen any AI native applications before. I think the interesting one comes out is like Telstra self-driving, which is basically completely an AI based in application, right? Another thing that comes out like Google Translate, for example, or translation app that we had before, right? You cannot have that without AI. It's not an enabler, it's basically the product kind of thing, right? But now with generative AI, the proliferation of AI native is so high that it's interesting to see the transition.
Yeah. And now that you talk about so many applications being there, what are some of the key interesting applications within GenAI space that you are, more excited about, or or they are not yet there, but you think that they should be there because that's the right way of leveraging technology?
Yeah, I think like particularly if you talk about there are mainly two areas that people are working on. Is like one is like text to text, right? And then the second is text to media, right? Kind of thing, or media to media also sometimes on the generative side of things. So both have the very interesting applications, right? I think I cannot basically I'll not mention much about the work we are doing, but sorry. Essentially, like if you think about like some of the companies in the media space, right? They are trying to create like entire films with Gen AI, essentially. Like, can we have Gen AI generate an entire film of 3 hours, right? Where story is written by Gen AI, where direction is also Gen AI,
Yeah.
and the characters are also generated by some text to image models or something like that, right? And then like I think there are companies kind of like Runway ML and other companies who are trying to kind of attack that vision in the right way. The reason for this, I think it sounds now it gets very interesting because now there is a possibility on very novel storytelling, let me put it this way, for media, which has never been done before, right? Similarly, for LLMs, if you think about that, like the very interesting one that is coming about, in my opinion, is like this the one company that is external is I see is the character.ai, where you can actually talk with a lot of personas overall, which is now I can interact with people who are maybe I think like-minded, or I can develop a bot of myself where people can talk to me, right? So it just scales up the kind of interaction I can have at various points in time, right? Very interesting applications like replica.ai has come up with like a companionship with AI, basically, and then you can actually talk to maybe I think some of the historical figures directly and get their advice, kind of thing. So these are like more consumer focused application. If you think about the business part of it also, I would say that the customer support is going to get revamped in the way we never know it, actually, with the generative AI technologies, which is like so much of cost every company incurs in this kind of settings, where it's kind of going to go away in some or other form.
Does technology like generative AI, or whenever we use it in such applications, does it create a mini world for us where we are creating it for us as an environment that's adjusted to our emotions? We are kind of self-manipulating ourselves because we are giving power to somebody, or maybe we are just so totally reliant or dependent on somebody to just follow our intentions and maybe respond in a way that we want them to respond. Is it a mini world we are creating?
You can say that. Like, I think obviously there are pros and cons to these things. And then you're right that maybe we are creating a mini world in some way, right? Which can be a more self-serving thing. But at the same time, if you think about it, it's just a easier one at least. Let's say if you take a character.ai example, or any personas kind of example, or any characters that we have, I would think that basically it's an easy way to get answers in a particular form, right? Like if I was talking to um, Socrates as a character, for example, right? And then, or a Bhagavad Gita, for example, right? Essentially, like one mode is to just read the entire book and then get the info, right? Or another way is to constantly kind of seek wisdom in a right way, or a knowledge in a right way from the character itself. Now, you can say that it's kind of man-made at the end of the day, right? It's not it's AI at the end of the day, and it can go wrong also. That is true, right? But so I would say that I would caveat the risk, but the value is still there, from what people are observing, in terms of getting the knowledge in the form that we need, or a personalized form we need, that was not there previously. Uh,
I'm just thinking out loud between the trade-offs we are making to get the value and the risk that comes with it. Because I am a pro technologist. I believe that technology has a lot of potential to change the way we humans work, or maybe all the things that we are interacting with today, right? But I think still that there are a lot of other possible ways in which it can improve our lives than going to this. The reason is, there are other side of the voices that come and say that, there's a lot of bias. We don't know whose version are we listening to. Is it the ground truth? Is it the reality that I'm seeking out, or is it something that they're learning from the interactions, the tools, basically the interactions they're having with me? Then are they going to show me the version that I want to hear, or is it really the single source of truth that they are referring, and then just paraphrasing, rephrasing, or summarizing it for me? It's totally not happening that way, right?
Yeah, so I think that's what I'm saying. It can be self-serving at times.
Yeah,
So like these tools, I think the way I think about it is not. I would say this is not the only application. Sure, I think there are
yeah.
many others, particularly in the enterprise world, that are there, that are improving the lives and enterprise. I think one good way that comes out is summarizing the company information, right, and having a chatbot, which is like, I think already implemented in many places today. Uh, and I think also in software debuggability systems and many other systems, this has been implemented. What I'm trying to say is this, right? Um, I think as we also highlight this kind of development, responsible development of these kind of technologies, but not to undermine, like even the chat GPTs of the world have helped in kind of seeking the information that we need, even if they are not perfect. So, and I think that is known that people are trying to improve AI safety in these kind of technologies, but at the same time, the value derived from seeking the knowledge in the right form is something that I think is helping the community overall.
I totally agree with that. And another reason that I think is that till now we were asking. So I remember that the first time years ago when I started talking about ethical and responsible AI, there was this conversation that it's not ethical and responsible AI. AI itself cannot be ethical or responsible. It's about how you use it. Then somebody said how you develop or build it. But I think the times that we are living now, it's the onus is again on how the utilization is happening, right? So if what kind of purpose I'm using it for, and if I'm totally aware. So awareness is the key point here. If I'm aware of what I'm dealing with, and I know the repercussions of it. If there's a fake news, deep fake, I think is one of the biggest problem that we are facing in Gen AI times, right? How do I know what's right versus what's wrong, what's true, what I can believe on, what the person I'm talking to, the video I'm looking at, right? So these are the I think the layers that are extra added into the society, that you don't know what to trust versus what not, is where that awareness is needed, and people need to be more uh, the people need to be updated about, or maybe sensitized about how to handle it. I think handling of it is very important, because now the power is in their hands. They have it in their phones and they are ready to use it, but they don't know the other side of it. And there are people who are very innocent or maybe very naive about technology, might not even know that that's possible as well. So that's, I think, what's concerning me. I'm not saying that the applications themselves are wrong, or maybe the intent behind the applications might be wrong, because what we are seeing is just the other side. For one side might really be getting some benefits out of it, and we can't generalize on behalf of the entire population.
Yeah, totally. And I think that's why I'm saying that. I think the technology safety is the biggest risk in my mind, right? If I think about this kind of generative applications, right? And safety is kind of at an unsolved problem, because
Yeah.
it kind of needs to be also taken into context, into account for every person. It's more personalized safety, if I think about it like that, right? And in that regards, the way we are building this technology has to be really thought through, right? In the way that it can be useful. Having said that, there are clear benefits of the technology itself, right? But it has to be balanced overall by just having a safety mindset from the get-go on when we are developing these kind of tools.
You're talking about safety. A lot of terms are being thrown in the market, policies, regulations, and some acts are being passed. There are drafts being happening. um, I don't know when or how the progress will happen, but that's going to happen for sure, because the rate of regulation is always, I think, slower than the development. So development happens, you realize, oh, this is also possible and this needed to be accounted for so that it's governed properly. Till the time that happens, my question is on how easy or difficult it is for tech terms to maybe go and self-regulate themselves. So is it the self-regulation, or voluntarily regulating ourselves, or saying that we have thought through enough about how it can impact, and the safety element of it is aligned with what humans would like to expect from a tool or an application that we are rolling out in the market? How is your or difficult it is, or what measures the companies are generally taking on these lines?
In my mind, it's quite difficult actually,
Yeah.
because how do you draw a boundary
Hmm.
for the entire world, kind of thing here,
Yeah.
right? What boundary it is also unknown, and if the problem is that if companies only police themselves in some way or being responsible themselves, it's very hard because a company is just bunch of people, which is like a very small subset if you think about it,
Yeah.
from the entire world. uh, no company, I think, without any clear guidelines from the government and other things, in my mind, can have it right, because every company can think it differently, right? And every company might be right in their own might, but it is very hard to kind of have a generalized sense of like where the boundary is without a regulations. But the good news I see is like this is catching up. The regulations
Hmm.
are catching up in various countries, EU, US, and other. Particularly in Gen AI, which is like the progress is so fast in regulations. I'm just amazed. So we will get something soon on all of these aspects. But till that time, in my mind, it's a very hard problem. Like companies, even if they try to kind of regulate themselves without the clear boundaries in place, they cannot get it right. But I think, but that doesn't mean that no, they should not do anything, right? They should continue to do in the whatever is the best interest they see, and best interest can be defined in many ways here. But at the same time, like companies should definitely take steps toward it, but it's very hard to get it right without the regulations. Sometimes I feel.
And that brings me to my next question, that the ones who are developing it are finding it difficult, because I think it's a very big problem to solve at a global level, and there are many dimensions at which things can go wrong. And which brings me to the point that we are expecting government and anyone of higher authorities to step in, but the technology is so complex that we are dealing with here. Even the people who are gonna go audit or validate it or maybe draw those guardrails, right? For them, it's so I don't know how we can expect them to first know the intricacies of it and then come out and say. So it's I think a tight collaboration with the tech firms who are developing it versus the ones who are authorized enough to draw those boundaries for us. The tight collaboration is needed. uh how do you see somebody who's going to come and say tomorrow that this is there's this typical example I give. I'll just explain with that. There's ISO standards, some international standards, right? You buy a product and you say this is ISO certified. So can there be a day we can see where we can say that this is a Gen AI tool which is ethically or responsibly certified? If that happens, who should be that entity that can take that onus of certifying it, and what do you see are they going to test it for?
I think first of all, I think this process is an iterative process. I would not say there is like an end goal, that once you have a regulation and everything is done. No,
Yeah.
I think the harms in this kind of settings, and with the new applications coming in, there will be emerging things as we go along this process of generative AI. And it has to be honest, it has just started like a year ago or something like that,
Yeah.
right? So there's a lot to be done, particularly on understanding the harms of these technologies, right? And also like developing the regulations around it. So I think you're right. Like basically there has to be a partnership. It's not just partnership of one company with the government. It's like consortium of companies with the
Yeah.
government, right? And all companies working in tandem together, right? To kind of have a unified understanding on how this technology should go out overall, right? And then I think that is happening also at some level, to be honest. But the thing is that like we have to be kind of have an iterative mindset in this kind of settings, rather than have one. So I would not say that like in the next 6 months, if the regulations comes out or anything like that, there will be like ISS style Gen AI certified kind of thing. There will still be open questions, I believe, but at least the initial process would have been started, which I really think it would be iterative.
Absolutely. I think it needs to start from somewhere. That first draft, that first thoughts being put on table. And the reason it hurts is that it's not because of just Gen AI, right? Gen AI has aggravated the intensity of the concerns, but there were some original concerns. I think the very basic one is on data privacy, or maybe the bias and discrimination that we've been seeing time and again. And these at least exist for years. At least we can't say that, these are new concerns. These exist, and these are just, accelerated at a pace that, because of the scale at which Gen AI applications or the Gen AI itself, the algorithms are trained, and the scale has taken it to another level. But some issues which are pre-existent are also left unresolved, which is the point of concern. And then let's start from somewhere. We have to start from somewhere. So let's in today's discussion, let's start from somewhere, saying that what do you think should be those extra guardrails as a scientist, or as one of the person who is contributing in this space? What kind of design choices should one make while dealing with such tool development or model development?
Yeah, I think that's a good question. So I think the way I think about this is that, obviously there are some biases in the world as we stand today, right? I think there are, think about just professions, right? Some professions have different gender representations in the current world, and that is kind of like for different professions, it's kind of very different, right? However, I think particularly the mindfulness here is like when we're developing these kind of tools, we should not accentuate those biases, right? Even if those might exist at some level in the world right now, right? The responsible development cycle is like we kind of limit those biases at least from a generated content style, right? Rather than accentuate those. I can give an example, right? I think if you think about like some maybe I don't know if that is right or not, but at least my observation is like some professions, like even if you say architect, for example, or a construction person or something like that, a lot of times maybe I think the male person might come out if you have a generated content kind of thing, right? But people can do a lot more in trying of training their models to kind of have like an equal representation of different kind of genders in particularly professions or something like this, right? So whenever the content gets produced, maybe the both images of like a male and a female comes out rather than only one person coming out kind of thing, right? So I think the responsible development cycle is not just taking the data from internet and training a big model and producing an output from it. Responsible development is like getting the data, understanding what are the biases in the data, balancing the data in the effective way, right? And then training the model so that the model doesn't accentuate any of the biases of all.
Absolutely. And talking about the tech stack as well in the Gen AI space, these models are, I think, such huge models. The reason they call it as large language models, right? So how do you put such colossal models into production? What extra choices that you need to be aware of? Or maybe if somebody else who is just using or leveraging these and maybe just fine-tuning them and they really want to make a production use case for it, how should they go about it? Because you're working already on it. So are there some tips that you want to share with the audience?
Yeah, I think first of all, the main tip I'll share is like really think whether you need a generative AI model or not. Most of the times you might not need it. And when you need a generative AI model, think about you need a billion parameter plus model or not, right? Maybe the 100 billion parameter might work also, actually. So I think that's the mistake I see a lot of startups do make right now. And I want to make sure that people do understand that it's not a silver bullet. And you should not go with like the most advanced generative AI LLM, for example. Number two, like and let's say if your application does need that, and there are so many applications which do need that, right? The extra care needs to be taken in terms of just your what design thinking you might have here, right? Is latency a problem in your applications? Maybe yes, maybe not, right? Is the model needs to be like distilled in like in terms of efficiency so that it can run in a minimum compute cost and a minimum inference time, right? So do we need to distill your model, which is like knowledge distillation or any other concepts kind of thing, right? So quantization and all those things that come about. So in terms of the platform you're running it for. So that's another. The third thing is um, how are you parallelizing the inference? If you really have to run, like basically think about the parallelization in terms of like how will you do like multi-GPU kind of inference overall, because these kind of models won't fit in one GPU even for inference, even if you take the most advanced, maybe H100s from NVIDIA today, I think they need to kind of have like multi-GPU inference. So think about how you parallelize the inference part essentially. That's basically there are solutions being developed right now. Actually, externally both as an LLM infra startups or others that you can actually reuse a lot of times to kind of develop this. I think those are the considerations I would say that really go in, right? And also, if sometimes what happens is people have extra layers on top of these things. Like if for example you're fetching something from databases, particularly for answering any questions, maybe having like a more updated information, like ChatGPT only goes to 2021 or something like that, right? And if you want more recent news information, you might have to update a database or fetch from a database. So how that fetching will happen, right? What context window you will have on fetching that information. So I think those are the kind of design considerations that you might have. Then another part is like just updating, like just in case if you're designing your application in some other way, if you are trying to have a plugins kind of thing, which is like LangChain style stuff, I would say, then think about like how will you fetch from the LangChain, what kind of orchestration framework you will use with LangChain, so that actually you can call the API, or maybe rewrite the prompt first of all in calling the API, and then API returns the result, and you use another LLM to kind of rewrite the response so that the user can be shown with it. So there are many layers in depending on the type of application you're developing. If you're developing a simple LLM application without any bells and whistles of databases, without any bells and whistles of LangChains or plugins or any other kind of fetching information on, then there is a very standard way to kind of optimize for, right? But if you're adding all of these settings, then it kind of gets more and more complicated, and you have to be mindful on what you can or cannot do with the cost of inference and other things.
Yeah, Ankit, there is one recent news about GPT's performance declining between March to June version when people are comparing that. So it's a decline in performance. There's a report, I think, by Stanford, which highlights that we were all after prompt engineering and writing prompts and getting the best response from the best possible way we get response from those models and integrate them into our application, the workflow. So where you mentioned the word orchestration. Now, if I'm writing so prompts are designed already. So they are engineered prompts based on what we know is required for our application. So if based on the response, based on the prompt, the response that I'm getting is varying every time, or the performance of that response from the prompt is getting degraded, the whole workflow gets disrupted. So in this such, or maybe in these kind of scenarios, what best can be done? Because we know that these are probabilistic, yes, they are bound to change. The whole question of reproducibility goes out of picture with this.
Yeah, I think like first of all, these are all probabilistic responses, as you said, Vidhi, right?
Yeah.
That's true. Obviously, the one everyone might be knowing who is dealing with LLM, there is a parameter known as temperature that is tune the temperature to kind of produce more predictable responses than more probabilistic responses. So first of all, I think make sure that people are doing that for their applications, because otherwise the response is really probabilistic, or it can go either ways. So make sure you tune temperature, number one. Number two, I think it's not about just Chat GPT's performance, to be honest. I think what happens generally is like if you're using LLM for your application, or maybe if you're using raw GPT-3 for your application, the best performance, but the catch here is that to get the best performance on your application is always recommended to fine tune on your data so that it works in your case. Because the thing with AI generally is that GPT-3 you can think of it as a horizontal technology that works for many, many use cases. But if you think about your vertical use case, it might be best off to fine tune or align, as we call it in AI, align the large language model towards your application. The one catch here is that your application itself might be changing. The way people are using your application starts to change because you have deployed an LLM and now people are doing something else, right? So you start getting more user feedbacks, right? So it's imperative to try the way you usually do retraining of machine learning models, right? It is imperative to use some fine tuning of large language models on your applications so that you can continuously iterate on that. At the same time, it's helpful to monitor also the performance of the base API that maybe you're using on LLMs is maybe through OpenAI or some other portal on like how they're performing on your data, and that, yeah, basically I think that's how you should approach it. One is like fine tune on your data to kind of make sure the performance is intact, and always reevaluate based on continuous cadences, like you would do for any machine learning application.
And when user interaction happens and it goes as one of the feedback into it, and there are constant updates or the changes or the or the changing performance happens maybe because of the increased usage of it. If at all it is happening, is it happening that way? First of all, I just want to confirm with that.
Increased usage should not, because
The interaction of the user, yeah, because that goes as feedback.
It goes as feedback, but I think if the feedback has to be like, they have to tune on that feedback, right?
Yeah.
So if the GPT model has not been retrained on the feedback, till the time it has not been retrained, it should not change. If it has retrained on that feedback, then yes, there is a likelihood that for your application, the performance can go down, right?
That's the distinction I want to bring out, because the one, if it has not been retrained, then this between two versions or maybe between a time frame of same GPT-4, the prompts have not changed, the parameters like you mentioned, if they have not changed and the performance is still degrading, should that be an area of concern?
Yes, I think that should be an area of concern, because I think I'm not sure how OpenAI is doing it, so I cannot comment on that.
Yeah, that's the problem for all of us.
Yeah. So I think what I would believe is like they must be aligning, because user feedback is data. Okay, let me put it this way. Data flywheel is one of the core concepts of LLM. Like that's how LLM should improve, right? And data flywheel, and that's why OpenAI has done a good job in delivering the best experience, because now they have like million users using it every day who are generating so much data that they can actually improve their own models based on that. So I do believe they are fine-tuning themselves with the data that they are getting from users, and that's why it's getting better and better. But if it's getting worse also, then maybe this is also the reason that the fine-tuning has not worked for some of the applications.
Okay, and yesterday was, I think I was writing the report on the similar degradation of performance and all on LinkedIn, and when I was writing my analysis on this topic, that why the performance is degraded, the very first thing that struck me was the question that we are asking GPT is that, tell me this XYZ number is a prime number or not. And that the question that we are asking it is also irking me a lot, that is it really meant for that use case? Like trying to gauge somebody's performance on something, maybe that's not what they're best suited for. That's what maybe they are still suited for, but should that be the way we should evaluate, saying that the performance is degraded? We're continuously asking it the prime number question multiple times and asking it to check the divisors and everything else happening. Is this how you see the performance of it impacting all of us when we are using it for high grade applications?
Yeah, I think first of all, mathematics is not the core competency of LLMs. I don't think we should I don't think that is the right evaluation, to be honest. Actually, and I have, yeah, basically, with chain of thought prompting and other things, you can see some performance gains in mathematical reasoning also. But I don't think that is a core competency of an LLM, and I would not use that as the only parameter to say that if the LLM is fine or not.
Yeah. And I think last question, and I know that it's getting late at your place, but for the companies who are either fine-tuning it, that's also one of the concerns still for them, but the ones who are building it, right? The pre-trained versions for the larger organizations. How easy or difficult it is to generate predictions in real time on these large models?
Yeah, it's very hard. Let me put it this
Okay.
way. It's very hard because like pre-training the models is one aspect of it, right? Making sure that all the other things in terms of inference, latency, GPU capacity, GPU optimizations, and also safety. If you think about, there are so many things that go on in terms of just making it a reality, which is uh, like an ML ops. Then people call it now LLM ops.
LLM ops, Gen AI ops, the words are there. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think, yeah, that's really a lot more difficult because of the size of the models, serving and other things compared to the usual ML ops that we were serving, like maybe 10 million parameter model or something like that. So yes, I do think that training is one aspect of it, but there is a lot more other aspects to making it work for the real-time applications. If your application is offline, sure, I think that should be fine.
Yeah. Talking about everything on Gen AI, I can't end the conversation without asking you this last question, which is on your suggestion on how to stay relevant when there's this greater fear looming out there, when already the market is weak and people are fear losing out jobs because a lot of layoffs happened recently. Now, if the layoffs are happening because there is a better technology who can replace them, what should be the people approach a smart person should adopt?
Yeah, first of all, I think there might be some people who might be losing their jobs if that is the case because of the technology. But I do think the I think that has been said by many people also, and I also say the same thing. Is like human brain is a very adaptable thing, right? And people do find, unless there are several new opportunities that come up, and that was the same thing that was said as part of when computers came about, right? And this is the same thing that has been said right now when first time AI came about 10 years back as a part of deep learning, right? And now it is also said as part of when Gen AI has come becoming a big thing. I would say that yes, I think the job that you might be currently doing might not be relevant. It can happen, right? But the way to stay relevant in this case is partly, I think, understand where the new opportunities are coming up. And I would say that like as simple as like the number of labeling jobs we see right now and the companies we see right now on just this popular concept of reinforcement learning with human feedback and other things, right? So the amount of labeling jobs we are seeing right now is like scaled up in a many folds in terms of just for machine learning labeling it or LLM or even Gen AI labeling itself. So it's kind of giving birth to new jobs also, or it's not a new job, but I think at this end of the day, the number of jobs in this category has increased, is what I'm seeing, right? So I think try to find the categories, right, where there are new jobs increment overall, and I think try to steer your knowledge towards that, right? At the end of the day, AI is still like many people say it as dumb or something like that, but AIs cannot have the reasoning that human mind has. So there is a lot of opportunities for people to kind of get into new areas as we go with generative AI boom.
Yeah. Thanks, Ankit. I think with this, we've come to the end of the episode. Thank you for taking the time. It's your late evening, so I'll just, end the show here. It's been an absolute pleasure hosting you. I think there's one conversation which is very relevant and important for everyone around us in Gen AI spaces on Gen AI ops or LLM ops, like we briefly touched, and it's a literature of its own, and it's ever evolving as we talk about it now. So maybe in coming weeks or so, we'll get to see one more engagement on these lines. But all those things around the safety alignment, starting from there to the tech stack to how to productionize it, what guardrails are needed, we've covered a lot of breadth on on this topic today. So thank you for taking the time.
No problem. Thanks a lot, Vidhi, for inviting me, and thanks for everyone for listening in.
Yeah.